Welcome to the Explainer. All right, let's just jump right in. I want you to imagine, just for a second, achieving drastically more in your life, your business, and your projects, but doing it by working significantly less. I know, it sounds kind of like magic, right? Or maybe like one of those late night infomercial pitches. But what we're looking at today is actually a hardwired, observable law of the universe. So today we are totally demystifying the 80/20 principle. We're going to unpack the secret to multiplying your results while drastically cutting down on all that wasted effort. So, what if 80% of your success genuinely comes from just 20% of your effort? You see, we all naturally fall victim to what's known as the 50-50 fallacy. There's this deeply rooted, almost democratic expectation in our heads that causes and results are just perfectly balanced. We assume 50% of our effort yields 50% of our results. We kind of assume all our customers, all our daily tasks, all our habits hold roughly equal value. But here's the thing. The data proves over and over again that this is just entirely wrong. The universe, it turns out, really doesn't deal in straight balanced lines. When you look at this visual breakdown of inputs versus outputs, the sheer imbalance is staggering. You don't see a nice equal relationship here. Instead, you see that just a tiny sliver of inputs reliably points to a massive dominant block of outputs. A mere fraction of the causes leads to an overwhelming majority of the consequences. And what that means, which is a little scary but also incredibly freeing, is that 4/5 of your effort is, for all practical purposes, pretty much irrelevant. All right, let's move into part one, the science of imbalance. The history of how this hidden pattern was actually discovered is super fascinating. It starts way back in 1897 with an Italian economist named Vilfredo Pareto. He was looking at patterns of wealth and income in 19th century England, and he noticed this mathematically predictable but highly unbalanced distribution. Then, fast forward to 1949, and you have Harvard professor George K. Ziff discovering that resources naturally arrange themselves to minimize work. He called it the principle of least effort. Just a couple of years later, in 1951, quality guru Joseph Juran applied this concept as the rule of the vital few to root out manufacturing faults, which literally sparked a global quality revolution. And then, get this, by 1963, IBM realized their computers were spending 80% of their time executing just 20% of their operating code. By hyper-optimizing just that 20%, they made their machines vastly faster than anything else on the market. So, why does this happen? Well, the answer actually lies in modern science. Chaos theory beautifully explains the 80/20 principle. You see, we live in a world of nonlinear relationships. Think about feedback loops for a second. If you have two goldfish in a pond, the one with even a slightly larger mouth is going to capture a disproportionate amount of food, multiplying a tiny initial advantage into massive growth over time. Or think of epidemic theory and the tipping point, where some ordinary phenomenon just suddenly explodes into a massive outbreak. Because of this sensitive dependence on initial conditions, small, tiny influences become vastly multiplied over time. The universe actively abhors balance. A 50-50 split is inherently unstable. Things naturally gravitate toward extreme dominance. Let me give you a completely mind-boggling example of this in action. 1.3. In a study of 300 movies released over an 18-month period, economists found that just 4 movies, literally 1.3% of the total, earned a staggering 80% of the entire box office revenues. The other 296 movies were left fighting over the remaining 20%. So in the real unrestricted market of the movie industry, you don't get a 50-50 result. You get virtually an 81 rule. It's wild. Which brings us to section 2, proof in the pub. Let's look at some everyday data. Okay, let's ground this in a really relatable scenario. Imagine you take 100 of your beer drinking friends. We rank them here, from the absolute heaviest consumers right at the top, cascading all the way down to the lightest consumers at the bottom. This right here is the exact method of an 80/20 analysis, taking a universe of people, measuring a specific characteristic, and ranking them in descending order so we can actually see the hidden relationship. Now, here is what happens when you compare those sets of data. You've got your friends represented on one side and the total beer consumed on the other. Notice how just the top 20% of the friends in our data set consumed a whopping 70% of the total beer. Right away, boom, we see a massive imbalance. If you were a brewery looking to market a new product, you absolutely wouldn't waste your time marketing to everyone, right? You would aggressively target that top 20%. But let's look at this from a slightly different angle. What percentage of those friends accounted for exactly 80% of the beer?
Well, the data shows that 28% of the drinkers drank 80% of the beer. This is so important because it brilliantly illustrates that while the exact numbers might fluctuate, maybe it's 70-20, maybe it's 80-28, the foundational mathematical imbalance is always there. The numbers don't actually have to add up to 100. The point is that a very small fraction is doing all the heavy lifting. So, the absolutely crucial point here is simply this. Focus on the vital few and completely ignore the trivial many. Whether it's the few products driving most of your profits, the few criminals causing most of the crime, or the few friends driving most of the beer consumption, you must concentrate on that hyper-productive minority. The great tragedy of modern life is just the unbelievable amount of waste. Continuing to pour your time and resources into the trivial many is the main thing holding you back.
Moving right along to Section 3, Living the 80-20 Life. Let's talk actionable advice. So, how do we actually apply this day to day? Well, the author provides a really useful framework featuring two distinct paths, 80-20 analysis and 80-20 thinking. Let's draw a clear distinction here because they are pretty different. 80-20 analysis is precise, it's quantitative, it's very data-driven. It requires you to sit down, gather the facts, and measure the exact imbalances, just like we did a minute ago with the beer drinkers. On the flip side, we have 80-20 thinking, and this is qualitative, it's a bit fuzzy and heavily reliant on your intuition and just deep thought. It provides profound insight without you needing to bust out a spreadsheet. Now, most of us aren't natural data analysts for sure, but we can all adopt 80-20 thinking to basically hypothesize what the vital few things are in our lives, and then act on that insight. All right, here is your ultimate 3-step game plan to put this into practice today. Step 1, identify your most powerful resources. Ask yourself, which few things are working fantastically well for you right now? Step 2, cultivate, nurture, and multiply them. Pour your time and your energy into making those strong resources even stronger. And step 3, which honestly is usually the hardest part for most of us, abandon or severely cut back on low-value waste. You literally have to be ruthless about ignoring the trivial many. There's this fantastic quote from physicist Joseph Ford that perfectly captures the scientific reality of our world. He said, "God plays dice with the universe, but they're loaded dice. And the main objective is to find out by what rules they were loaded and how we can use them for our own ends. The universe is unbalanced. It is loaded in favor of the vital few. And the 80-20 principle, that's basically the ultimate rule book for those loaded dice." So I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. I want you to really ask yourself, which 20% of your life is driving 80% of your success? Is it a specific client, maybe a certain daily habit, or particular relationship? Whatever it is, I want you to find it, multiply it, and give yourself the permission to finally stop worrying about the rest. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I challenge you to go out there, start doing significantly less so you can achieve vastly more.